Well, it is a Friday morning. Joining us this morning, we have a couple guys who know what's going on in economic development. Mr. Mark Turner's with the Economic Progress Alliance. Jim Becker's with the Titusville Community Development Agencies for now. And they join us here this morning. Big news this week, and I guess let's get right into it. Jim, you're going to be leaving your post with the Titusville Community Development Agencies and taking Mr. Turner's place with the Economic Progress Alliance. And Mr. Turner, for you, congratulations on retirement.
Thank you very much.
And welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am, as you said, Mark Turner, the Executive Director of the Economic Progress Alliance here in Crawford County. And I've been in the practice of economic development for about 40 years now, and thusly the reason that I'm kind of interested at this point in retirement. It's kind of wrapping up the career. It is, for at least people of my generation, it's been kind of a typical career. I've worked in the business, 6 different communities, represented 6 different communities in 3 different states. It's always been kind of the work with a white hat. It's always been public benefit-based economic development that I've practiced in varying communities. This is the smallest community that I've ever operated in, and I've been here now 13 years in Crawford County. But interestingly enough, the operations that we have here, the Economic Progress Alliance, are the largest of the operations that I've ever run. And it's the smallest community, but the biggest budget, the largest staff, probably the most significant concentrated economic development effort that I've ever been involved in managing. So I've enjoyed the career, but it's time to call it a day. So
I have a feeling, though, I mean, if you're like Jim, you're not going to just call it a day. That phone will be nearby.
Well, oh yeah, and you know, these are issues that one of the unique, and when you retire or you contemplate retiring, you think about these things, and one of the real unique aspects of this profession is that you do represent the public interest. You in economic development. It's not about business development. It's about employment and tax base and in funding, you know, institutions that exist in communities. It's really about community development, and so you do feel good about that kind of mission over the years. And it doesn't end, of course, when you retire. You're going to continue to have those same sorts of interests, but I'll do other things. I've got 40 years of this has been great. I've enjoyed it, but I really also do look forward to doing other things.
Well, Jim, for you to kind of mirror that conversation. You're in a position where a lot of people in the community think you're responsible for growing jobs, and that's it's.
And he is, and by the way, I would agree with that.
Yeah. Well, but you know, both of you guys, your passion for the communities you're serving, I think in the back of your mind, that might not be the mission statement, but it's also sort of going on in the back of your mind that we're growing jobs and families and keeping them here. So for you, Jim, what's that meant for you over the past 10 years?
Well, I mean, the big deal is if you can help companies and the ownership and leadership of companies by removing barriers that are oftentimes thrown in their way to help them invest in their company, to advance their new ideas, what's the next big widget that they want to either take to market, or a new idea for streamlining their business. If you can help them move that company forward, it's a gratifying thing when you can be beside the business owner and either be that sounding board for them for new and fresh ideas, or in some cases help with financing, in some case help them with locations of right people to talk with, either at the state or federal level or regulatory agencies, and help move that process forward. It's a win-win. Because a lot of times these people have no idea where to reach out to or who to talk with to at least get the right answers. So if you can put them in the right place with the right people to help remove those barriers, oftentimes it leads to a smoother operational either investment in the company or employment growth, things like that that the company owners are truly looking for.
It sounds like it's sort of a trickle-down philosophy. It all kind of starts at the top. If you give them good information, good access to financing, one thing will lead to another.
The hope is that you can, in many cases, that one of the negatives you hear about economic development sometimes is where people don't know where to turn. And there's an alphabet of acronyms that you have to weed through and try to figure out where you're going with. But if you can have an organization that can, and staff who can provide that roadmap to get them through all those acronyms and different organizations, and at least get them in touch with the right people. I don't think we should be seen as the answer to all the questions either. But if we can put them in touch with the right people who have those answers, I think that's critically important for their time management moving projects.
And that's probably where some community members get confused with what your role is with that organization, where they think, well, that's your job to be creating these positions and these jobs.
I think, Luke, generally it's a matter, as Jim is pointing out, of facilitation, of kind of breaking down barriers, as Jim is mentioning, and allowing things good from an economic perspective to occur in the community. And that's what we do I think in the best of economic development worlds, that's what we do. In the case of the Economic Progress Alliance, for example, now we start on a kind of a tactical level. How do you go about bringing positive economic contributions to the community? Well, you want to foster jobs. You want to release the job potential that exists in our communities. In our case with the Alliance, what we've done over the years is we have identified also other major strategic problems that exist in the community. For example, in 1986, we had the nation's first synthetic yarn manufacturer with about 3,000 jobs at Avtex close their plant. They abandoned more than 1 million square feet of environmentally blighted property in Vernon Township, of all places, in a rural community without growth. A festering problem. How do you deal with that? Well, what we did was we decided that we would, and we've done a lot of this in Titusville too, we decided that we would kind of embrace that heritage and address it. Extraordinary, frankly, and I don't mean to be blowing my own horn, I'm talking about the community stepping up and taking on major initiatives like that on a not-for-profit basis, taking over the environmental responsibilities and the cleanup responsibilities, and then creating a project that is self-sustaining, that actually supports itself. We do that in both regions of the county right now. This is one of the reasons that Jim is such a great fit, if you will, into the Economic Progress Alliance. We take that space, we rehabilitate it over a period of time. We don't do it overnight. We're not in a booming environment. We do it deliberately and with good plans over a long period of time. And we convert blighted space into space that a manufacturer can lease for about 80% or 75% of what it would cost them in Erie. And that's really the point. We live in a competitive environment, and our companies, if we want to unleash their capacity to grow jobs here, we have to be competitive. Why would they do it in Crawford County if it's not better than doing it somewhere else? The answer is they won't. So that's what we do, is we try to remove these barriers. In the case here of Crawford County, we have such an heavy industrial heritage that's left us with some environmental heritage issues too. Not purposely, these were best practices in 1950 that now we recognize are not. But that's what we're doing in large part because that's what we need to do in this particular application. As I mentioned, I've worked in 6 different communities. This is very unique. Each one of them has been. They've each had their own demonstrable issues and that had to be addressed very differently from an economic development standpoint.
Mark, for you,
I'm sorry to be so long.
No. Great comments. What's been your biggest challenge in your position here?
Oh boy, that's a really good question. I've been afraid that people are going to start asking me that question.
You can pass that to Jim if you like.
No, I wouldn't want to pass it to Jim. I hope we don't have to pass it to Jim. The biggest challenge has been ourselves. I think back at 13 years, we have had a lot of what I would refer to as major battles, things that take us away from the mission, take us away from doing the things that I just mentioned to you. And those battles, in my case, have been with the city of Meadville, or the Department of Environmental Protection, or Summit Township, the Conneaut Lake School District. The lack of haven't had to. So we ourselves. I mean, it's not here. I just mentioned that we live in this competitive environment, and that's what we struggle to try to exist in. But it's not China that I'm concerned about. It's not New York. It's not about Ohio. It's really us that the lack of cohesive commitment to and our propensity and willingness to fight with one another and call the lawyers and engage.
Yeah.
And I don't mean just disagreeing. This gets expensive. It gets challenging. I wish we were more united in our common interests, like economic development.
Hold on 1 second. Let Jim answer that question.
So that's why I wish you hadn't asked the question.
Well, we can take it
and
back.
I don't mean to be overly critical either, because
No.
I think these are all good folks.
But that's a good, valid point. You see it in a lot of places.
Jim, how about for you? What's been, since you're leaving here, what's been your biggest challenge?
Biggest challenge here has probably been over time. My predecessor, Mike Allen, did a lot of laid the groundwork and the ugly things that had to be done with the acquisition of the property at Opportunity Park, the acquisition of Town Square, and put those pieces of the puzzle in place. The next step for that, which is what I stepped into, was renovating those buildings and getting now starting to put tenants into those buildings.
Make it work.
And make it work.
Yeah.
With math.
Right. And that's not an overnight thing. I mean,
No.
you're talking 15, 20 years almost.
Yeah,
of-
these are operations that largely are not subsidized. They have to stand on their own.
Yeah, we've been fortunate here for the most part. Everything that there was a period of time several years ago where we had some challenges with city leadership, but I can honestly say in recent times here they've been very, very supportive. When we go to them with ideas, we go to them with applications that would be on behalf of the city, where in some cases community development related pieces, in other cases industrial related pieces. They've been very supportive of trying to move this process forward with us. So I have not experienced, and the school district here has been very supportive. So that sounds like I will have an impending challenge. but we've been.
It seems like there's more to play though over there. There's more entities.
No question.
821. This is the Morning Drill on Stream Television. Armstrong in the Allegheny News Talk Sports Network. Go ahead, Mark.
What I was going to ask was, and we see this a lot, not only with economic development, but with any other project almost that takes place in the public arena, is you have the NIMBYs, you have the folks that are not on my planet, not here, not now. No one gets to see the wizard. And I live in Northwest Pennsylvania, and I've never been out of Northwest Pennsylvania. I think one of the statistics that I've heard over the years is perhaps about 60% of the folks who live here have not been outside the area. And that presents a huge challenge in education. How do you folks, both of you, how do you work to overcome that kind of resistance?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with, in our case, trying to educate the public of what we're trying to do over the longer haul. There's an issue right now with workforce in Northwest PA.
There has been for some time.
Yeah, that is really starting to rear its head and finally take a larger, more prominent point into discussion, because workforce is now directly affecting what these manufacturers and business owners can and cannot do. The skill levels of a workforce that they need, that are either technically savvy, CNC machinists, welders with advanced skill levels, things like that they're having a hard time taking on new and more profitable contracts, because they're having a difficult time finding the workforce that can handle the skill sets they're going to need to complete the job. There's a lot of talk right now around workforce and workforce initiatives and how to correct the problem, and they're finally truly engaging employers, I think, this time.
You mean using robots?
Yeah.
And education, Mark, as you're pointing out, the public's interest in or support for economic development, or their lack of interest, their NIMBY syndrome, that kind of thing, is a major challenge for us in the community. And I'm convinced it's difficult to do this and also do the work that we do to become educators and to spend a lot of time in public forums arguing and discussing and dialoguing on these issues, but when we don't do near enough, because I don't think there really is an appreciation among most in our community of the challenges that we face. Crawford County has not experienced any serious population growth for, let's say, I think safely, 40 years.
Or more, yeah.
Or more, yes. That's a major issue. We have employers throughout our community today that have average age of workforce that's 60 years old. Well, that is a problem. Are the millennials rushing to our community? No. That is an issue. Are we experiencing any growth? No, that is an issue, and we have to find a way in our community to do that if we're going to sustain our employment base, if we're going to be able to we do actually have to be a community that people want to move to, that people want to live. And today that means we, Meadville, Titusville, compete with Seattle. Not Oil City, but Seattle. You have to be a world-class place today to compete, and so these stakes are very high, and there's an awful lot about these details, I think, that the communities don't have an appreciation for. But
well, there used to be a time,
there's a fear that while we're not all that educated, we are slowly dying on the vine, and what we do is play a lot of defense and pick up a lot of pieces and do those difficult projects in the community. A Conneaut Lake Park, for example, that we really feel need to get done. We don't think it's going to be enjoyable. We don't think it's going to be easy by any chance, but we think it's necessary. When we don't have a lot of education, we get into this default, you can't do it, we can't, this negative kind of environment. There isn't a project that we've taken on that we don't have people in the community saying that you can't do that. That just isn't going to make any sense. They've never been able to do it before. People have tried and failed before. And, that's the kind of attitude, I'm afraid, that sets in communities when we really don't understand how important it is that we prepare for the future and that we get aggressive and
like an elevator to nowhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there was a time when Meadville held their own with business and industry, and Titusville held their own with business
and still
and
is,
industry.
by the way, and still is. It's a miracle to me that they still are. But
yeah, but is it? We have these conversations all the time. Where you had all these brain trusts from these companies, SciTemp, and you still have some big places in Meadville operating, but as those big companies go away, is there, not that communities can't do it on their own, but you're seeing more reaching out and becoming a more regional type of community almost. Is that the sense where it's not just Meadville, not just Titusville, not just Oil City or Crawford
Luke,
or Venango?
you're touching on something that that I've experienced over my career, over that 40 years. The first communities that I represented were patriarchal communities. The president of the bank had that community, provided leadership in that community, or the publisher of the newspaper provided leadership in that community. The next generation, not so much. Then the corporate headquarters moved to Chicago, or so it grew and moved to Chicago, or whatever the case might be. And over the years, leadership in communities, in my opinion, have become less patriarchal and more shared, and that's the challenge. We want our political leaders to participate in that now. We want our volunteers and our boards to participate in that now. It is not. It might have been a lot easier years ago to take a community by the throat and just say, "Here's the direction that we're going in," But we're much more consensus based today. We want we want acquiescence. We want everybody kind of going in the same direction.
Well, you almost have to. This buzzword
Absolutely.
collaboration.
Oh, absolutely.
It's
it's just the way we've evolved, and I don't think that's a bad thing. It's just we can't expect that you're going to have the president of the bank riding in on a white horse with a big check like they used to generations ago.
You don't know my wife then. That's how she rides to work every day.
Oh, okay.
Did you see the white horse parked in the back?
But you get my point that it's that's one of the observations that I've seen that's been kind of profound over those 40 years is that the dynamics of communities have changed because of the demographic changes and the economic changes. And the companies that we have in our community in Crawford County, maybe to get away from the doom and gloom and the difficult for a moment, boy, to me, channel lock tools have been made here for I don't know how long, for 150 years. They're making better tools today than they ever made, and there's no reason in the world, particularly with that family, not to believe that isn't going to continue to happen. It will change, but they are committed, and I think have a demonstrated track record of being able to make it through an awful lot. And we are blessed in our community to have that example one after another. Those companies, the younger generations that are now running those companies are sitting down with me saying, Mark, why can I need to hire a brilliant young engineer? How can I do it? How can I convince them to come to Meadville? I mean, they know themselves as corporate entities here are benefits, but selling that to the outside and making our community an attractive place for young people is becoming a very serious matter to all of those companies that are out there that we're talking about. These are the workforce issues that Jim was referencing earlier, and our need to really respond in a big way to these kind of workforce issues. If you want to manufacturing something anywhere in the world with a high degree of precision, this is right here. This is the spot on the globe that you're going to find. That's our heritage in this region, and we need to maintain that, in my view. And it's of serious concern.
I wish we had another 6 hours to spend with you guys. It's been a lot of fun. Before we wrap up, I do want to ask you quickly, though. I'll ask each of you, Mark. What do you want to be remembered for?
Making a contribution, I suppose. Just a general contribution. I'm very much a block and tackle type of person, so there's not one specific project or initiative or anything like that, but making a contribution in each of the the basics, having left communities better than I found them, I hope.
Jim, for you, you're not completely disappearing from us, but what do you want to be remembered for with your current position as you head to Meadville?
I think that I agree with Mark. I think that's the common goal, is to leave it better than you found it. And taking the major projects here into the Titusville area one step closer, or in some cases several steps closer. But in some cases,
repeating a step.
Yeah, doing it twice. It's a great community over here, and fortunately we have a great staff in place at the Community Development Agency. So I don't expect anything to change all that drastically.
One of the real side benefits here is there's always been a strong relationship. Jim and I have known each other for a long time. Our organizations work closely with one another. I can't think of a time where we ever had any conflict. So we know one another. We're informally integrated. So that's...
Mark, I hope your guys like softball.
Well, I don't know. We're a little intimidated by his history of coaching.
No. Guys, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And best of luck in your retirement. Jim, best of luck in your new position, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you in the near future.
Absolutely.